What happens when a TV show that's meant to entertain inspires something unimaginably dark? The result is nothing short of terrifying. In a case that feels ripped straight from a crime thriller, fiction and reality collided in the most disturbing way imaginable. Corey Martin, a 37-year-old from Queens, New York, was inspired by the series Dexter to commit a chilling crime. He watched the show, learning how to cover up a murder, and then applied those lessons in real life. It all happened back in April 2018, when a quiet neighborhood in Brooklyn became the center of a gruesome discovery. Martin strangled and dismembered 27-year-old Brandy Odom, a woman he managed as a sex worker, all to collect life insurance money. He meticulously planned the crime, even covering the bathroom with plastic before dismembering her body just like in the show. The details surrounding the incident were as horrifying as they were puzzling. Authorities uncovered evidence that pointed to a calculated and deeply unsettling plan, one that seemed almost too strange to be true. But how does a fictional TV show inspire such darkness? What led Martin down this dark path of twisted obsession, and how did it all unfold? Join us as we uncover this disturbing case and explore the twisted intersection of fiction and reality. Before we talk about this case, let's have a look at who Brandy Odom was. Brandy Odom was a 26-year-old woman with dreams like anyone else. She was a daughter, a friend, and someone who had her whole life ahead of her. But sadly, she found herself trapped in the grim and dangerous world of sex trafficking. Managed by Corey Martin, a man who exploited her, Brandy was reduced to being a source of profit for him, rather than being seen as a person with dignity and worth. Born and raised in New York City, Brandy faced her share of struggles. Life wasn't easy for her, but she always held on to her dreams of something better. Brandy was known for her resilience and determination to fight against her circumstances. Despite the challenges she faced, she never stopped hoping for a brighter future. But her life took a devastating turn. Corey Martin, a 37-year-old pimp, manipulated and controlled Brandy. For him, she was a means to an end, nothing more than a pawn in his game of power and greed. Brandy's life, filled with hopes and dreams, was tragically cut short in April 2018. But what makes her story even more heartbreaking is how her spirit, a fighting, hopeful spirit, was extinguished far too soon. New York City, known for its bright lights, endless energy, and towering skyline, is a place where millions chase their dreams. It's a city of contrasts, where luxury apartments sit blocks away from struggling neighborhoods, and life moves at a relentless pace. But beneath the surface of this vibrant metropolis, darker stories unfold hidden in plain sight. And in April 2018, one such story came to light in Brooklyn's Canarsie Park. This beautiful place meant for families, joggers, and quiet reflection turned into the scene of a horrifying discovery. Among the trees and brush, a passersby stumbled upon something unimaginable: a dismembered torso. It didn't take long for the community to learn that the remains belonged to a 26-year-old Brandy Odom. The discovery shook the neighborhood. How could such a brutal crime happen in a city buzzing with life? For a city as big and loud as New York, it can be easy for the worst acts to hide in the shadows. Canarsie Park, like many urban parks, was a place people went to escape the noise. But on that day, it became the center of a nightmare. But who was responsible for this unthinkable act? Corey Martin, a man deeply rooted in the shadows of New York's underworld, carried out a crime so disturbing it left the city in shock. Known in Queens as a pimp, Martin's control over Brandy Odom wasn't about care or protection. Instead, it was about power, greed, and exploitation. And so, Brandy, a 26-year-old woman with dreams and aspirations, became a pawn in his twisted game. In early 2018, Martin's plan took a horrifying turn. He was living at a house in Rosedale, Queens with Brandy when his tragic crime took place. Inspired by crime shows like Dexter, he began plotting something unimaginable. For Martin, Dexter wasn't just entertainment. It became a guide, a step-by-step manual for committing the perfect crime. In late 2017, alongside his accomplice, Adele Anderson began setting their sinister plan in motion by fraudulently securing 2 life insurance policies under Brandy Odom's name in March and December of 2017. Pretending to act on her behalf, they ensured the policy seemed legitimate, even making premium payments using Western Union money orders and a debit card linked to Brandy. By carefully using her identity, they avoided raising suspicion. These policies weren't meant to protect Brandy. They were a key part of Martin's calculated scheme of profit from her death. Every step showed the cold-blooded planning behind a crime driven purely by greed. The policies, fraudulently obtained, were the cornerstone of a plan that would soon unfold. And so, on a tragic day in April 2018, Martin entered Brandy's bedroom. In an act of cold premeditation, he strangled her. Now, it's important to note that this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment crime. It was calculated and deliberate. After taking her alive, he set out to cover his tracks. Martin and Anderson brought cleaning supplies and a vacuum, ensuring no trace of the murder would be left behind. The plan wasn't just to end Brandy's life, but to erase any evidence that could tie them to the crime. But Martin's preparations went far beyond cleaning. He searched online for tools to carry out the next chilling step of his plan. On Home Depot's website, he looked up a DeWalt 12-amp corded reciprocating saw, a powerful tool designed for heavy-duty tasks. He then turned to YouTube, where he watched videos on how to use it. His actions left a trail of digital breadcrumbs, each step revealing the dark intent behind this crime. In the bathroom of his Queens home, Martin meticulously prepared the space. He laid down heavy-duty black garbage bags on every surface to avoid leaving any evidence. Then, using the saw he had researched, he dismembered Brandy's body in the bathtub. This gruesome act mirrored scenes from Dexter, showing how deeply Martin had internalized the show's methods. But the horror didn't end there. Martin and Anderson had to dispose of Brandy's remains. Their plan was clear: scatter her body parts in different locations to make identification harder and delay the investigation. And so that is exactly what they did. In the early morning of April 8 and April 9, 2018, they transported her remains to Canarsie Park in Brooklyn, a quiet area that would soon become the site of a gruesome discovery. While they thought they could get away with this terrible crime, everything was soon about to fall apart. On April 9, 2018, a passerby in Canarsie Park stumbled upon something that would haunt them forever. Among the trees and bushes lay a torso, later identified as Brandy Odom's. The discovery sent shockwaves throughout the neighborhood and beyond. What had once been a peaceful park was now the epicenter of a horrifying crime scene. Police were called to the scene immediately. As they began their investigation, more remains were found scattered throughout the park. Each discovery painted a picture of a crime that was not just brutal, but carefully planned. Speaking of which, the dismemberment wasn't done hastily. It was calculated, methodical, and disturbingly cold. And so investigators faced a tough task. They had to piece together not just Brandy's remains, but the events leading up to her tragic death. Each clue was a thread in a web of greed, manipulation, and premeditation. The case wasn't just about solving a murder. It was about uncovering the dark truth behind Brandy's final days. But their first major breakthrough came from Martin's accomplice, Adele Anderson. Her testimony revealed the sinister plot that had been carefully crafted. Anderson admitted to helping Martin take out the fraudulent life insurance policies, which was a clear sign to their intentions. But the planning didn't stop there. She confessed that she and Martin had spent hours watching crime shows, including Dexter and the First 48. These weren't casual viewing sessions, they were strategy meetings where they learned what to do and what not to do to avoid getting caught. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered Martin's digital footprint. His internet searches were damning, from looking up the tools needed for dismemberment to researching methods to evade detection. His activity painted a clear picture of premeditation. It was as if he had left a trail for the authorities to follow, each click bringing them closer to truth. Despite the lengths Martin and Anderson went to, they couldn't cover their tracks completely. The discovery of Brandy's remains set off a chain of events that would unravel their plan. Canarsie Park became the focal point of a citywide investigation, drawing attention to the dark underbelly of greed and exploitation that had led to Brandy's tragic death. And yet, as chilling as the discovery was, it was only the beginning. What the investigators would uncover next would expose the full extent of Martin's cold-blooded crime. In March 2024, Corey Martin faced the consequences of his horrifying actions and then began the 2-week trial. When the trial of Corey Martin began, the courtroom was packed with people eager to hear how such a brutal crime could have unfolded. The prosecution presented a compelling case, laying out Martin's cold-blooded actions. They showed how he and Anderson plotted to profit from Brandy's death by collecting $200,000 in life insurance proceeds and carefully planning her murder to avoid detection. The evidence was overwhelming. Martin's online searches were a focal point, demonstrating his detailed preparation. Searches for tools, cleanup methods, and even articles about the discovery of Brandy's remains painted a picture of a man obsessed with covering his tracks. The prosecution also revealed Martin's fascination with Dexter, arguing that it directly influenced the crime. But the most damning evidence came from Anderson herself. She testified against Martin, describing how they executed their plan. Her account of the murder, dismemberment, and disposal of Brandy's body left the courtroom in stunned silence. The defense attempted to shift the blame onto Anderson, suggesting a love triangle had driven her to commit the crime out of jealousy, but the jury wasn't convinced. The sheer weight of evidence against Martin, coupled with Anderson's testimony, left no room for doubt. But as the trial unfolded, it also shed light on the larger issue of human trafficking. Brandy's exploitation and tragic end highlighted the vulnerability of individuals caught in such circumstances. The trial wasn't just about justice for Brandy. It was a reminder of the dark realities many face in silence. Anyhow, it was clear that the people responsible wouldn't get away with such a horrible crime, and so they didn't. After a 2-week trial, a federal jury gave their verdict. Corey Martin was found guilty on all charges, including murder for hire, wire fraud conspiracy, aggravated identity theft, and fraudulent use of identification. According to the court documents, Mr. Martin has been justly sentenced to prison for his abhorrent actions, ensuring that society will be safe from him for the remainder of his life, stated NYPD Interim Commissioner Donlin. I applaud the unwavering commitment of our NYPD investigators, as well as our partners at the FBI and the Office at the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, whose persistence led to today's result. We remain dedicated to holding accountable those who seek to profit from the mistreatment and exploitation of others. His crimes were as calculated as they were horrific. After years of planning, Martin's greed led him to take Brandy Odom's life in a brutal and premeditated act. Now he faces a mandatory life sentence. The evidence had been undeniable. Each detail of Martin's calculated cruelty had been laid bare, leaving no questions about his guilt. The judge handed down a mandatory life sentence, ensuring that Martin would spend the rest of his days behind bars. It was a sentence that reflected the severity of his actions. Martin's greed and disregard for human life had led to a crime so heinous it left a permanent scar on the community. Brandy's mother, Nicole Odom, expressed her relief after the verdict. "I waited 6 years," she told the New York Daily News. She described Martin as a monster, and for her, knowing he's off the streets provided some comfort after years of pain. Breon Peace, the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, condemned Martin's actions. He explained that Martin treated Brandy not as a person, but as a way to make money. He trafficked her, murdered her, and then discarded her remains like trash, all in pursuit of financial gain. Mr. Peace called Martin's life sentence a fitting punishment for what he described as a ghastly, cold-blooded crime. He also emphasized that Brandy's life mattered and expressed hope that the verdict would bring some measure of closure to her family. The verdict is more than a sentence, it's a statement. It acknowledges Brandy's suffering and ensures that her murderer is held accountable. For Brandy's loved ones, while nothing can bring her back, the justice served marks the end of a long and painful journey. Outside the courtroom, discussions about the influence of the media also gained traction. Martin's reliance on Dexter and other crime shows to plan his actions sparked debates about the responsibility of the media in shaping behavior. While entertainment is not to blame for crimes, this case raised important questions about how such content might affect vulnerable or disturbed individuals. The story of Brandy Odom and Corey Martin is one that will not be forgotten. For Brandy's family, her memory lives on as a reminder of her resilience and spirit even in the face of unimaginable hardship. Her life, though tragically cut short, serves as a call to action against human trafficking and exploitation. For the wider community, the case is a stark lesson in vigilance and empathy. It reminds us to look out for those who might be vulnerable, to question signs of abuse or manipulation, and to advocate for stronger protections for victims of trafficking. The courtroom may have delivered its verdict, but the impact of this case continues to resonate. It's a chilling example of how greed and cruelty can drive someone to the unthinkable. As we reflect on Brandy's story, let it serve as both a warning and the motivation to create a society where such horrors are less likely to occur. What do you think drives someone to turn their greed into such a calculated and horrifying crime? Do you believe the influence of crime TV shows like Dexter can push people to commit real-life violence? Or is it just an excuse for deeper issues? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on this episode. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with our next in-depth investigations on Real Crime Zone. See you in our next video.